The galaxy is a place of order, logic, and predictable biology. For eons, the Galactic Hegemony mapped the stars, categorizing planets by their hospitality. There are the garden worlds where the air is like silk and the gravity is a gentle embrace. There are the industrial spheres, rich in minerals but requiring environmental suits. And then there are the death worlds. In the Vela system sits a planet known as V402, though the rest of the galaxy simply called it the Maw. The Maw was a cosmic mistake. Its gravity was nearly 3 times the galactic standard, a crushing force that would snap the chitinous legs of Excelosion or collapse the multi-chambered hearts of the Lithian nobility. Its atmosphere was a turbulent soup of corrosive gases and unpredictable weather patterns that could turn a sunny morning into a hurricane of glass shards by noon. Every automated probe sent by the Hegemony had been crushed, melted, or blown into the sea within hours. The High Science Council had officially designated V402 as inhabitable by none. It was a graveyard of ambition, a silent, swirling marble of violet clouds that mocked the very idea of life. At least it was until the humans arrived. The Hegemony Observation Station, the Eye of Valos, sat in a stable orbit far above the reach of V402's gravitational well. Commander Vora, a seasoned officer of the avian-like Skrull, stared through the reinforced viewport. Below, the violet clouds of the Maw churned with malevolent energy. "Commander," her adjutant chirped, clicking his mandibles in a sign of confusion. "A vessel has entered the sector. It is not one of ours. It bears the crude markings of the Sol Confederacy." Vora sighed, her crest feathers flattening. "The humans? What are they doing in this sector?" "The nearest trade route is light years away. They are requesting landing coordinates for V402, Commander. They say they have purchased the mineral rights from the Lesser Council." Vora let out a sound that was the Skrull equivalent of a laugh. "Mineral rights to a death world? They've bought a tomb. Tell them to turn back. Their ship's hull will crumple before they even hit the stratosphere. Their biology is carbon-based, isn't it? Soft skin, brittle bones. The gravity alone will turn them into a slurry." The adjutant relayed the message. A moment later, a voice crackled over the comms. It wasn't the refined, modulated voice of a Hegemony AI. It was a human voice, rough, rhythmic, and strangely calm. "This is Captain Elias Thorne of the SS Endeavor. We appreciate the warning, Eye of Valos, but we've done our homework. We aren't looking for a vacation spot. We're looking for work. We'll see you on the surface." Vora watched in grim fascination as the boxy, scarred human vessel began its descent. "Track them," she commanded. "Record the telemetry. The Academy will want the data on exactly how long it takes for a Sol-class hull to implode." The descent was a nightmare of fire and friction. On the Eye of Valos, the monitors flickered with red alerts. The human ship was being hammered by atmospheric lightning that could power a small city. The gravity was dragging it down like a predator dragging its prey into a burrow. "Temperature rising," the adjutant reported. "Hull integrity at 60%, 40, 30. They're breaking apart, Commander. They're insane," Vora whispered. But then, the Endeavor did something the Skrull didn't expect. Instead of fighting the gravity with thrusters that would inevitably burn out, the ship angled its blunt nose and used the very force of the planet to accelerate, cutting through the thickest part of the clouds like a spear. They hit the ground hard. The shockwave was visible even from space. A massive plume of dust and violet gas. "Silence," the adjutant said, "no life signs detected." Vora felt a pang of pity. A waste of life. A young race, eager to prove itself, snuffed out by its own arrogance. She was about to order the monitors shut down when a faint signal pulsed from the surface. "Commander, I have a transmission. Audio only." Vora leaned in. Through the static and the roar of the V402 winds, she heard the same rough voice. "Touchdown confirmed. Hull's a bit dented, and the coffee machine is broken, but we're down. Tell the Skrull we're open for business." Vora's crest stood straight up. How? How are they alive? The Hegemony demanded an investigation. 6 months later, a small delegation, including Vora, was sent down to the surface in heavily shielded high-gravity transport. They wore exoskeletons designed for extreme environments, heavy suits that made every movement a chore. When the hatch opened, Vora expected to see a desperate camp of dying refugees. She expected to see humans crawling on their hands and knees, crushed by the weight of a world that hated them. Instead, she saw a city. It wasn't a city of crystal towers or floating gardens. It was a city of steel, iron, and grit. The humans had built deep into the basalt cliffs, using the planet's own rock as a shield against the winds. Great geothermal vents hummed with energy, harnessed from the planet's violent core. And the humans, they weren't in suits. Vora watched, her sensors screaming in disbelief as a human male jogged across the landing pad. He was wearing a simple t-shirt and heavy trousers. His muscles were corded like steel cables, his movements heavy but deliberate. Every step he took hit the ground with the force of a hammer, yet he moved with a fluid grace. "Captain Thorne," Vora called out, her voice amplified by her suit speakers. Elias Thorne turned. He looked older than he had on the comms. His skin was tanned dark by the harsh radiation that filtered through the clouds, and his eyes were bright with a terrifying vitality. "Commander Vora," he smiled, extending a hand. "Welcome to New Hope. Mind the wind. It's a bit breezy today." "Breezy?" Vora gestured to the wind gauges on her suit, which showed speeds of 150 kilometers per hour. "Captain, this planet is classified as a Class 10 death world. The gravity alone should have stopped your heart. Your atmosphere is toxic. How are you standing here without a breather?" Thorne laughed, and the sound was deep and resonant. "Oh, we use breathers if we're going out into the sulfur flats. But here? We've got scrubbers. And as for the gravity..." He jumped. It wasn't a high jump, but the sheer force it took to leave the ground and land without breaking his legs was a feat of biological impossibility. "Humans evolved on a planet called Earth," Thorne said, leading them toward a reinforced glass observation deck. "Earth isn't a garden world, Commander. It's a competitive, volatile, high-pressure environment. We spent thousands of years fighting predators, climbing mountains, and surviving winters that would freeze your blood. Our bones are built to carry weight. Our hearts are built to pump against resistance. We don't just survive pressure. We need it." Over the next few days, the delegation witnessed the impossible. They saw human engineers repairing a massive drilling rig in the middle of a shard storm, their movements synchronized and calm while the wind threatened to tear their equipment away. They saw human children playing in a gymnasium where the gravity was dialed up even higher for resistance training. But the most shocking moment came during the Great Tremor. V402 was geologically unstable. On the third day, a massive tectonic shift ripped through the basalt cliffs. The human colony shook. A section of the ceiling in the main residential hub began to buckle. A massive support beam weighing several tons snapped. A group of Skrull diplomats were trapped beneath the collapsing structure. Vora watched in horror from across the plaza. Her exoskeleton was jammed by the vibrations. She couldn't move. "Help them," she screamed. She expected the humans to bring in heavy machinery. She expected them to calculate the risk and find a logical solution. Instead, 3 humans, dock workers by the look of them, ran toward the falling debris. They didn't have suits. They didn't have power loaders. They reached the falling beam. One man, his face turning a deep shade of purple from the exertion, braced his back against the sinking metal. 2 others joined him. Vora heard their bones groan. She heard the primal, guttural screams of effort that humans make when they push past the limits of biology. For a heartbeat, the impossible happened. The 3 humans held the weight of the world. They held it just long enough for the Skrull to crawl out. Just long enough for the emergency struts to be slid into place. When the weight was finally transferred, the 3 men collapsed, gasping for air, their skin covered in a sheen of sweat, but they were laughing. One of them looked at the terrified Skrull diplomat and winked. "You okay there, buddy? You look a little pale." Vora stood frozen. In that moment, she realized that the Hegemony's charts were wrong. They had classified hospitable as a lack of danger. They thought life was something that needed to be protected, nurtured, and shielded. They had never encountered a species that thrived on the struggle. As the delegation prepared to leave, Vora stood on the ramp of her transport. She looked out at the harsh, violet landscape of the Maw. It was still a terrifying place. It was still a world that wanted to kill anything that touched it. But the humans had tamed it, not by changing the planet, but by being the only thing in the galaxy tougher than the rock beneath their feet. "Captain Thorne," Vora said, her voice filtered and soft. "Why this planet? There are thousands of empty garden worlds in the Hegemony. Why choose to live here, in the dark, under this weight?" Thorne looked out at his city, then up at the swirling clouds. "Because, Commander," he said, "on a garden world, you forget who you are. You get soft. You stop reaching. But here, every breath is a victory. Every step is a choice. We didn't come to V402 because it was easy. We came because it was hard." He reached out and tapped the hull of the Skrull ship. "And besides, the view of the lightning from the peaks is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." As the transport lifted off, Vora watched the lights of New Hope fade into the violet haze. She thought of the humans, their fragile skin, their short lives, their strange, unbreakable spirits. She thought of the 3 men holding up the sky for a species they barely knew. The Hegemony had spent millions of years looking for the perfect world. The humans had simply found the worst one and called it home. Vora sat back in her seat and began to type her report. She didn't use the standard scientific metrics. She didn't talk about atmospheric pressure or mineral yields. She wrote from the heart. She wrote about a species that looked at a death world and didn't see an end, but a beginning. A species that didn't ask for permission to survive, but simply demanded it from the universe. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human. If this story moved you, subscribe for more human stories from the stars.